I had to pin me down and say what's the purpose of Irrational Games, you know, what is its sort of mission? I think its mission is to bring the player closer to being a participant in the narrative rather than an observer of the narrative. And with Infinite, we really wanted to sort of remove a lot of the barriers we had between the player and the narrative, and that was, you know, instead of the game taking place in effectively a graveyard, you know, where everybody's dead, and where all interactions with people were from behind, either over a radio or behind a glass window, we really wanted to bring you into a space with living characters and having them react to you, not just in a narrative script standpoint, but in terms of a systemic standpoint to some degree. I mean, Elizabeth is an interesting hybrid. Obviously, she has a lot of scripted things that she does through the course of the game, and there are certain things she's going to say and certain things she's going to do, but the challenge is once those narrative bits are over, and that's, you know, from a time-wise, that's a very small percentage of the game. Most of the time, you're just with her, running around, or in combat, or just exploring a space, and she's got to look good, she's got to seem smart, she's got to seem engaged all the time.
Oh, can you smell that? I've never smelled anything like that before, have you?
Beaches I know don't smell much like that.
On the curve of relatively easy versus relatively hard, it's relatively easy to do a scene that is canned animation that the player's camera is controlled briefly and Elizabeth is doing something. But to really make her feel like she's a human when she doesn't have a script, I believe I asked an animator, go walk up to that guy, see what happens. You know, just stand in his space and wait for him to react. Like, how does he jump away? Does he back up? Does he stare at you? Like, how does a person react if you come in and you stand too close to them? How often does a character blink? Like, what's the normal blinking time for a person when they're happy or when they're sad? Do they blink more when they're happy and they're sad? Somewhere in the engine there's a number that is just a single digit that is written into an archetype of Liz somewhere that controls how many times she blinks. And if that number were cranked way up or cranked way down or anything other than the number it is, you would completely lose the illusion that Liz is a human. So from this small number of how many times she's going to blink, or how many times she's going to turn her head, or how many times she's going to look at something and get bored of it, and then look over here and get bored of it, and, you know, wait for the player to do something or wait for the story to progress. Those are all defined by designers and by artists at some point in the game, and it's really about getting in and tweaking them and seeing the unexpected results of the combinatorial effect of all those numbers together.
When you turn and you look at Liz, if she's just standing there like this, it's over. You know, like, nobody does that. People, you know, they look at things and they tune into things and they react to things. And Liz doesn't come with the same kind of software that a human actor does. Even though she was voiced by a human actor and she was mocap by a human actor, these moments of her choosing her behaviors, her choosing her animations, had to be generated by the game, and they had to be generated based upon what the player was doing. And they had to be generated upon what Liz had done recently, so she wasn't repeating behaviors. They had to be generated upon what was going on around her. And that was a huge amount of work. And just getting her right, getting the small things right, getting her not to be over-attentive girlfriend, you know, where she's sort of staring at you, or a close talker, or not paying attention at all, or not paying attention to anything in the world, or let alone the subtleties like walking by somebody and they're smoking and she sort of like coughs or something like that. That was a lot of work.
Well, come dance with me, Mr. DeWitt.
I don't dance. Come on, let's go.
Why? What could be better than this?
Elizabeth's perspective in particular with the world of Columbia, she's been locked in this tower the entire time, but we made a change early on to say, you know what, if she's going to be locked away, she at least has to have some sort of information about the world so that she can begin to ask those questions that the player are probably going to be asking. You know, if she's out and she's exploring the world of Columbia, you and Elizabeth, you being the player, are really seeing this world for the very first time, and we can use her as a conduit to sort of give some of that information that the player might be wondering who exactly are the founders, where did Comstock come from. She can sort of give the informational aspect of that, you know, explaining who Comstock was, but she doesn't really have any sort of reference or framework to sort of see how that plays in the broader world.
Do you know this artificial beach was built in only 6 months?
And how do you know that?
From one of the books I threw at you.
Her and Booker can sort of fill in, though Booker has all the sort of life experience that he can pass on to Liz and explain, you know, why things are a certain way. She's the one that's providing the information, and so you don't have one character sort of standing still and giving you information. There's an actual dialogue that's occurring, and we're sort of giving players all the backstory that we need in the process.
Think you can pick this?
I can do that.
I don't hide the fact that there's sort of a Rapunzel notion to Elizabeth, this girl trapped in this tower. That's where she starts, at least. Where she ends up is a totally different matter. But the great thing about Disney films is that the lead character sings this song. They called it the I Want song, which expresses their desire and their goal. And I couldn't have Elizabeth do that. I couldn't have her bust out in song. So we had to come up with a way where we expressed who she was and what she wanted in the world. And we had this idea that she was being observed in a way where she wasn't aware. And that's the same like with whether it's a monologue or whether it's a song, there's a character portraying as if they are not being observed, expressing their innermost thoughts. And the fact that Elizabeth was in an environment where she didn't know she was being observed allowed two things. It allowed us to have the player learn about her and also make the player feel complicit in that creepy observation that she experienced. And so they felt an emotional twinge about the fact that they were kind of creepily observing her. Then when they start talking to each other, you know, little things about each other can start coming out. And the key with that is you know, if Elizabeth just says to Booker without context, "So Booker, tell me about your past from birth onwards," it's gonna feel weird. But because you encounter things in the world that relate to Booker's past, like the Wounded Knee stuff, and that leads to questions. And that is helpful, and but it's a real balancing act. Their conversations and how we reveal their characters were something we were working on to very, very late in the day.
We are storytellers, foremost and above everything, and there are times when we've taken things out of the game because we didn't feel like they served the purpose in the story that we're telling. I mean, our ultimate goal is to make you feel that you are part of this time, of this place, and you're in BioShock Infinite, that you're on this adventure with Elizabeth, and that you're working your way through the world. And if we need to pull things back or add things in to support that, then we generally don't shy away from it.
Liz is this combination of like a zillion people working together. There's Courtney, who's a voice actress, Heather, who's the motion capture actress. There's Amanda Jeffries, who was the lead designer on the Liz Squad. Anna, who was sort of the face of Elizabeth for the marketing materials, who was a fan, you know, who was cosplaying, who we saw and, you know, fell in love with the work she was doing and wanted to get her involved. We also scanned her face to portray Elizabeth in the TV ad. And then there's everybody else. I as a writer and a director, and Shawn Robertson is the head of the animation team, and John Abercrombie running the Liz Squad and the technical aspects of that. It takes a lot of people to put her together, and getting everybody a shared vision was critically important about who this woman was and about what motivated her. And it just was a lot of conversations and frankly, a lot of failure, you know, we failed our way, hopefully, to success.
No, it's me, Elizabeth. Are you all right?